to the debut session of At CCLI. I'm Paul Herman. We're here in our offices in Vancouver, Washington. And wow, what a debut it's going to be. Our guest today is multi-Grammy winner, multi-Dove Award winner, Stephen Curtis Chapman. Stephen, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you, buddy. Great to be with you. Great to be with all of you. Debut. This I did.
This is the first one.
Sweet.
This is the first one.
You are
our debut.
Oh boy, I hope I don't mess it up. Hopefully we can, set a good bar. But
Thank you. I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. We would love to hear about your worship album that just came out this last spring. So if you could just tell us the story of how it came together.
Absolutely. Well, it's a long story. I don't know how long we have, so hopefully if you get bored, you can, you can't change the channel, but stay with us. But no, it feels like it's, 30 years in the making almost, or I could say it's 8 years in the making. I could say it's, 50 plus years in the making, because there's a lot of different ways to look at it. But, a lot of, I guess, some of the press and different things about this album was saying it's my first ever worship album. And that's true, technically speaking, but I always kind of feel like I have to correct it and say, well, I feel like every album I've made, every song I've written is a worship song, in a way, with the hope and the desire being that it really does, invite people into God's presence and direct them there to a place of worship. But it's kind of interesting sort of story as a backdrop, I guess, would be several years ago, I was approached by my record label to consider making a worship album. And at that point it was the first wave of artists beginning to cover, the worship songs that were being sung every Sunday in church. And it was a great thing, great movement. I was excited. I loved singing and leading those songs. But they said, hey, what about you doing a worship record? And I went and kind of went away, prayed about it, pondered it, thought about it. And at that point, the thought was, because people are really responding to this, it would do well. People would really love to hear you do that. And I came back and I'll never forget, because I sat down with my record company guys there, A&R and all that, and I said, hey, I've got it. I've got the idea. Here's what I think I want to do. I've been writing these songs, and they're love songs to my wife, and that's like my worship album is going to be these songs about really loving the people that God's put in my life well. Because that, I think those are as important of worship songs as I can write. And they kind of course, looked at me and like, Chapman, no, that's not what we're talking about. We mean, you know what we meant. And I was like, I know, but go with me on this. Anyway, they were a little disappointed in a way, but they also were like, well, if that's what God's put on your heart. And I did an album at the time called All About Love. Right. And so, I guess at that point, even for me, thinking about someday I want to do that, but I really need to know that it's very, honest, and it's very organic, and that it's what God has really, kind of entrusted me with to say and to sing. And not because, it would do well, or people are selling a lot of worship records right now. I need to know that it's really, it's really honest and that way. And for me, and that, again, I say that, carefully, because I don't mean to imply that any record would not be made, by any other artist, honestly, but just that was a struggle that I had about just where would that come from. And I felt like at that time I would know when the time was right for me to do a true corporate worship album, if ever. Again, feeling like all of my music, plenty of songs that have found their way into worship services, but I've often joked that I'm the special music guy. I'm the guy that gets the the offertory. It's like those songs, because they tend to be a little more wordy. They tend to be a little more of a journey. I'm a storyteller. Right. I like taking people on a journey. I'm bad about even sometimes not repeating the chorus. Much less repeating a line where people can really sing along. Yeah. So it tends to be more of a that kind of an approach to my songwriting, and so. Really, this album came to the real beginning of it was a little over 8 years ago, when we, as a family, lost our youngest daughter, Maria, in a real tragic accident at our home. And I mean, already at that point, as I mentioned, I had led worship, music in my church. I loved incorporating those songs into my concerts, and more just loved so many of those songs. And one of my very favorite was written by my friend Matt Redman. He and I had actually done some writing together only months before we lost Maria. We had all been together in Scotland at a gathering that Martin Smith had put together of all these great worship songwriters and worship leaders called Compassion Art, or it became known as that.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Yes. Wow.
And I was a part of that as kind of the, I was sort of the guy sitting in the corner going, okay, I know I don't really belong in this room with all these guys with this kind of music I write, but I'm really thankful they invited me, and I want to learn, I want to participate, and I got to write with those guys. But Matt is such a dear friend. He and I had written together on several occasions. Of course, Chris Tomlin and I had known each other for years, and he went out and toured with me when people knew his songs but didn't even know really Chris Tomlin as an artist yet, on a tour called All Things New, along with another unknown group at the time called Casting Crowns.
Oh, wow.
It was a pretty great tour to have both those artists with me in their early days. So when it was May of 2008 when we lost our daughter, and I, even in the earliest hours, and it would be the early days and months of our real journey into the deepest valley of grief and the valley of the shadow of death. Even at the hospital, we were at Vanderbilt Hospital in Nashville, and I'll always remember being in that place. As I share the story, the closest thing I can come to kind of paint the picture is it just felt like this black hole of sadness and grief and just the confusion, and how am I going to lead my family? How am I going to survive this? How's my marriage going to survive? How are my children, who had all been impacted by just even the events that led to our daughter's death? And it was just, all of that was just kind of crashing in, and I, at a moment where it kind of felt like insanity. The only thing that came to the only clear thought it seemed like I could have was, God, you give, you take away. I'm going to bless your name. I'm going to worship you. It doesn't make any sense right now, but nothing makes any sense. And that's the only thing that makes any sense to me right now.
Yeah, and these songs are that powerful.
Well, that's the beginning of it for me, because I began to that was really for me a doorway to go into Scripture and to begin to look at the Psalms through a very different lens for me, and to begin to realize that so many of these Psalms that I loved, but I always felt like I almost connect with it, but I don't know. I mean, I grew up Southern Baptist Church. We sang the hymns. Occasionally we'd sing, somebody'd bring out a guitar and we'd sing a psalm set to music, but it was not a culture of, worship culture. And so I think for so long I'd even felt in a way like I'm a little bit on the outside looking in. I want to be a part of that. I want to understand. I want to feel what everybody else is feeling and experience. But suddenly I began to look at the Psalms and realize so many of those great Psalms that are celebration songs begin with the psalmist, with David saying, "How long, O Lord, are you going to forget me forever?" From a place of pain and a place of desperation. And for me, I could really connect so deeply with that, because that's where I was. It's where we were as a family, and that just beginning to drop anchor in the promises of God and say, God, I don't know what else to do right now, but I'm going to worship you. And if this is my last breath, I want to go out saying, I'm going to trust you. I have nothing else. I have nothing else to hold on to. And so from that place, the first seeds were planted, I think, for me to begin to want to write these songs from that journey, to say these are the truths that have anchored me, that have held me together, that have brought sanity back to my mind. I mean, I think a lot about the King Nebuchadnezzar and that scripture in Daniel, and he says, I lifted my eyes to heaven and my sanity returned. That's really what it was for me, writing these songs, declaring God's word, just saying, this is what's most true, and I'm going to hold on to this.
Wow. You know, I was in one of your concerts and heard you sing One True God, and it was just a powerful moment. Can you talk about the impact of that song in particular?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the songs, it was in a way for me kind of returning back to these are the anchors. These are the anchors of truth. I was involved actually in a project with a great friend and author Randy Frazee, who's a pastor with Max Lucado at the church in San Antonio, and he was in the process of putting together a project called Believe, and kind of a curriculum to take churches through. They had created something called The Story, if you're familiar with that, and with Max and Randy, and then this was kind of a follow-up to that. And Randy and I had connected around certain, just sort of, these are core truths that we really have to know that we believe this, to get it from here to here, not just that we believe in our, but how do we get it into our heart? And the very first of those is can we really say we believe that God is God?
Yeah.
I've written a lot of songs. I wrote a song, God is God and I Am Not, a few years ago, which was one of our anchors, even as we walked through the journey of losing our daughter, just saying, God, you're God, I'm not. I want to do this different. I want to script this different. This is not how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
But can I trust that you're sovereign? Can I trust that you're on the throne, that you're in control, that you're God and not me? And so I knew that I needed and wanted to write that truth as almost the very starting place of this music, of this album, would be that God, you're the one true God. You don't change. You are great. You're good, but you're alone in your greatness and your power and your sovereignty. That you have conquered death and the grave. That you have risen in power and that you reign forever. I want to say those things and sing those truths. And so I started writing that song, One True God, and as I often do, I wrote about 15 versions of it, and I'm like, I don't know, is it? And then I start, really wrestling with, I want these as much as I can, as much as, Mr. Loquacious, run-on sentences Chapman can. I want to try to write songs that the church could sing with me, and yet there's so much I want to say, so it's going to be a challenge. Yeah. So I called a couple of my buddies, and I called Matt Redman, and I said, I don't know if there's any way we could work on this together, but there's nobody I would love more to try to write this song or any of these songs with. Yeah. And God orchestrated it. Matt was coming through town. We got together and we wrote the verses. I played him all my versions, and I said, what do you hear in here? Throw it all out, let's start from scratch, whatever. And he said, well, I like this, you got that, let's do that. And this one theme, just returning, that one voice in the dark, all of these, and one, one lamb that was slain, just come back to this one. And then we got to the chorus, and I had a chorus that I felt good about, but I didn't feel like it was finished yet. And that we finished with the verses, and he said, I like that chorus, I think that's it. So I kept, as I'm prone to do, wrestled with it and rewrote it, tried different things. And I had seen Chris Tomlin, guy that you may have heard of around here, I don't know, he's a young guy, he's getting a start, and I'd seen Chris several times, and I told him about this project, and I said, I'd love to have you do something with me if it's at all possible. And he's so busy and got so much going on. But he called me and said, hey, it was the 11th hour. I was recording the song like 2 days later. And he said, do you still want to work on a song? I got an afternoon. And I went, yes, please, come over. I want to play you this. I've got everything, but I don't know if the chorus is right. And he sat at piano, I got the guitar, and I played him the verses. And he said, man, I love that. He said, yeah, and he noodled around with some things, and he said, what about this? And started to sing that chorus, and I just said, yes, that's it. We began to work on the chorus, and then we wrote the bridge together. And crazy thing was, I said, okay, I'm really going to push it now. We've got this song written that I'm really excited about. And he said, I feel like this is a really special song. And he said, I said, is there any chance you'd come and sing a verse with me and record it with me? And I'd be just, over the moon about that. And he said, let me see, I think I can. And so like the next day he came in the studio and
Wow.
we recorded it. So pretty cool.
Very nice.
Pretty amazing.
Is there any other thoughts that you might have just to share with our CCLI churches or worship leaders, worship teams,
Yeah.
anything you can tell?
Well, you know what, I am, first of all, thankful for the opportunity to just speak to you all, and I'm honored to get a chance to spend some time with you. I am so grateful for what you do, you who are, week in and week out, leading. It is, and you've heard all of the things that I could say about just, even in Scripture, I'm constantly reminded that, when the Israelites were going to battle, they put the worshipers on the very front line, and I know what it means to be on the front line. Not only, we get to lead the charge, but also we're the first ones to get shot at and get, and all of that. And I guess just my encouragement to you would be what I have discovered over and over again is I want so much to lead from a place of strength and power. And it seems like when I began even writing this album and doing these songs, over and over again, God brought me back to a place of recognizing my weakness. I mean, I'm battling voice challenges and kind of some sickness and things. It seems like when I began this project, I've battled with that more than ever before. And I think in all of that, God is just continuing to remind me that it's in our weakness that His strength is made perfect, and it's in our honesty about our struggles and our journey that God is glorified. And I guess my encouragement is just to, as much as we want to, I don't know, it's something we do in the church so much, and I do it, just you want to shy away from those weaknesses. You want to, come out in your strength, but there's just something so profound where, there's something that I see God doing as we are just really willing to acknowledge our need of Him in a really honest way, and then ask Him to just come be all that He can be when we are acknowledging just our desperate need of Him. And so that would be just, my encouragement to you. And again, just I'm thankful for what all of you do. I'm the one sitting, often I get to lead, but more often I'm the guy sitting, who just is needing to be led into worship, and just to continue to be led by those who are worshiping and inviting me into that process. So I'm thankful for what you do. God bless you in it, and hopefully in these collection of songs, I might have given you one or two that you can be encouraged by as well. So,
Stephen, thank you so much. Man,
absolutely,
this has been great, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.